At 46, after the accident that ended her career and the settlement that barely covered the hospital bills, Nora Whitfield had nothing left but a name on a document she didn't understand. Her great-aunt had died alone in a town Nora had never visited and left her a single thing: a key and an address that turned out to be a locked room above a shuttered general store on the coast of Maine. Nora almost didn't go. She had no money for the trip and no reason to believe there was anything worth finding. But the letter from the lawyer said one strange thing: that the room had been paid for in advance every year for 31 years by a woman who never once opened it. What Nora found inside wasn't money. It was a life's work, hidden in plain sight, addressed to someone who was never supposed to see it. And by the time she understood why, it had already changed everything about who she thought she was. Before we begin, if stories like this one mean something to you, take a moment to subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Nora Whitfield had not planned to fail at 46. Nobody plans it. It arrives the way weather arrives, gradually and then all at once. And by the time you understand what's happening, you are already standing in it. She had been a surgical nurse for 22 years. It was the one thing she had been good at, the one place where her hands knew exactly what to do, while the rest of her life fell apart around her. Then a drunk driver ran a red light on a Tuesday morning, and the nerve damage in her right hand meant she would never hold an instrument steady again. The settlement covered the surgeries. It did not cover the mortgage. By the time the letter arrived, she was living in a rented room, 46 years old, with a hand that trembled when she reached for a coffee cup and a future that had gone completely blank. The letter was from a law office in a town called Harrow's Reach on the coast of Maine. It informed her that a woman named Adelaide Corliss had died, and that Nora was her only living relative, and that Adelaide had left her something. Nora had never heard the name Adelaide Corliss. She called her mother, who was in a care facility now, and did not always remember the difference between last week and 1985. But when Nora said the name, something cleared in her mother's voice. "Addie," her mother said. "My aunt, your grandmother's sister." They didn't speak. "Why not?" A long pause. "Nobody ever told me. There was a falling out before I was born. The family just stopped saying her name." Another pause. "She was the one who left. That's all I know. She left, and nobody followed her." The drive to Harrow's Reach took 9 hours. Nora made it in her failing car with $300 to her name because the letter had said one thing she could not stop thinking about. The room had been paid for in advance, every year, for 31 years, by a woman who never opened it. The lawyer was an old man named Prentice, who kept his office above a bakery and smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and salt. He handed Nora a key and a single sheet of paper. "Your great-aunt was a private woman," he said. "I handled her affairs for the last 20 years of her life. In all that time, she came into this office exactly once a year, every February, to renew the lease on that room. She paid in cash. She never told me what was in it." "You never asked?" Prentice almost smiled. "I asked, once, the first year. She looked at me the way you'd look at a child who'd asked something rude, and she said, 'It's not mine to open. It's waiting for the person it belongs to.'" He slid the key across the desk. "I suppose that's you." The room was above a general store that had closed in the 1990s and never reopened. Nora climbed a narrow staircase on the outside of the building, the wood soft under her feet, the ocean loud and gray behind her. The key turned on the first try. The smell hit her first. Paper and linseed oil and old wood. Then she saw them. The walls were lined, floor to ceiling, with shelves, and every shelf was filled with books. Not printed books, handmade ones. bound in cloth and leather. Hundreds of them, each spine hand-lettered in ink that had faded to brown. Nora pulled one down. The pages were covered in a careful, slanting hand. It was a journal, a record of a single year, and inside it, pressed between the pages, were drawings. The coastline, birds, the faces of people in the town, and in the margins, notes, observations, small acts of attention paid to a place and its people over the course of a life. She pulled down another. Another year, another. There were 51 of them. 51 years of a woman watching the world and writing it all down, in a room she paid for and never opened, waiting for someone who might one day want to know that she had been here. On the small desk by the window, centered carefully, was an envelope, and on the front, in the same slanting hand, was a name. Nora's name. She sat down before she opened it, because her legs had stopped being reliable. The letter inside was short. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are the one who came. I did not know your name when I began writing these. I only knew that someday, someone from the family that erased me would need a place to land, and I wanted them to find that they had never been as alone as they felt. I left our family because I could not become the small, quiet thing they wanted me to be. They never forgave me for it. But I forgave them, slowly, 1 year at a time, in these books. Everything in this room is yours now. Not because you earned it. Because you came. That was always the only requirement. There are more letters. I hid them the way I hid myself, in plain sight, where only a patient person would find them. I numbered them. Start with the shelves nearest the window and work your way into the dark. That is how I built this. That is how you will understand it. Adelaide. Nora read it twice. Then she looked at the 51 books lining the walls and the numbered letters she now knew were hidden among them, and she understood that she had just been handed a reason to stay somewhere for the first time in years. She found the second letter that night, tucked into the 1974 volume, the year Adelaide had first arrived in Harrow's Reach. Nora, if you found this one, you're reading in order, which means you're the kind of person who respects how a thing was made. Good, I was too. The family called it stubbornness. I called it attention. I came here with nothing, a younger woman than you are now, running from people who loved me in the wrong shape. The town did not know me and did not owe me anything. But there was a woman who ran the store below this room, and one morning she left a loaf of bread outside my door and did not knock and did not ask for thanks. That was the beginning of my belonging here. It started with bread I didn't ask for. Remember that. The people who save you are rarely the ones who announce it. Nora sat on the floor of the room with the letter in her lap and the ocean sounding through the thin walls, and for reasons she could not have explained, she cried for a woman she had never met. The next morning, there was a knock. An old man stood at the top of the outside staircase, holding a paper bag, his cap in his other hand. He was easily 80, weathered, steady on his feet in the way of people who had lived their whole lives near the sea. "You'd be the relative," he said, not a question. "Nora." "Bennett. I run the hardware down the road. Ran it. My grandson runs it now." He held out the bag. Blueberry. Adelaide liked them. Figured whoever came might too. Nora took the bag. She did not have a name yet for what she felt, but it was the same thing Adelaide had described. Bread left at the door. Belonging offered before it was earned. "You knew her," Nora said. 60 years. Bennett looked past her, into the room, at the shelves of books. His eyes moved across them slowly. "She showed me one of those once. Just one. Wouldn't let me read it. Just held it up so I could see the cover." He was quiet for a moment. I always wondered who they were for. They were for me, Nora said. She just didn't know my name yet. Bennett nodded slowly, the way a person nods when something they'd wondered about for years has finally been answered. Sounds like her, he said. He came back most mornings after that. He'd sit on the step outside the room with his coffee and tell Nora about a woman she was only meeting through her own handwriting. Adelaide had been the town's unofficial keeper of records, Bennett said. Though no one had ever given her the title, she drew the faces of people who died, so their grandchildren would have something. She wrote down the old fishing routes when the men who knew them started to go. She kept a ledger of every storm, every hard winter, every year the herring ran, and every year they didn't. She was writing the town down, Bennett said, so it wouldn't disappear, and she never once asked for a thing in return. Why? Nora asked. Why do all that for people who weren't even her family? Bennett was quiet a long time. I asked her that near the end, he said. She told me her family taught her the one lesson that mattered, that the people who love you loudest are sometimes the ones who love you least. So she decided to love quiet, and pay attention, and leave things behind for people who'd need them. He looked at Nora. I reckon you're what she left them behind for. The third letter was hidden in the 1981 volume, the year Nora would learn that Adelaide's sister, Nora's grandmother, had written to her once and then never again. Nora, this is the hard one. My sister wrote to me 30 years after I left. One letter. She said the family had been wrong. She said she was sorry. She said she hoped I was well. I never answered it. I want to tell you why, because it is the mistake I most regret, and I don't want you to make it. I did not answer, because I had spent 30 years building a life without them, and answering would have meant admitting that the door had never really been closed, that I could have gone home, that the distance had been, in part, my own choosing. Pride is just fear wearing better clothes. I was afraid, and my sister died believing I hated her, when the truth is, I loved her so much, I couldn't bear to find out I'd stayed away for nothing. Do not let a door stay closed, because opening it would mean admitting it was never locked. If there is someone you have stopped speaking to, and the reason has grown too old to remember clearly, go. Knock. Bring bread. Say nothing if you have to. Just go. Nora set the letter down. She thought about her mother, in the care facility 9 hours away, about how long it had been since she'd visited, about the small, accumulated distances that had grown between them, made of nothing in particular, made of years. She picked up her phone and booked a visit for the following week. She stayed in Harrow's Reach. She had not planned to. She had planned to sort the room, sell what could be sold, and drive back to the rented room and the blank future. But the town would not quite let her leave. The woman who ran the bakery below Prentice's office asked if Nora knew anything about keeping books, because hers were a mess, and her eyes weren't what they used to be. Nora, who had spent 22 years reading charts with hands that no longer worked, but eyes that still did, said she could try. Bennett's grandson needed someone to mind the hardware counter 3 afternoons a week. Nora's hand couldn't hold a scalpel, but it could work a register. Small work, enough to live on, barely. But it came with something the surgical career never had, a town that knew her name, and a room full of books that were slowly teaching her who she came from. She read a letter a week. She rationed them the way you ration anything you know is finite, and with each one, the woman who had been erased from the family became more real, and Nora understood a little more about the strange inheritance she'd been given. Not the room, not the books, the permission to leave a life that had become too small, to pay attention, to belong somewhere by choosing it, one quiet day at a time. She visited her mother that following week, as she'd promised herself. Her mother was having a clear day. Nora showed her one of Adelaide's books, a volume of drawings from the 1970s, and her mother turned the pages slowly and stopped at a drawing of a young woman standing on a rocky shore, looking out at the water. "That's Addie," her mother said softly. "I've only seen one photograph of her my whole life. But that's her. I'd know her anywhere." She touched the drawing. She drew herself, so someone would remember what she looked like. Her mother's eyes filled. There was no one to remember her. "There is now," Nora said. She found the last letter in October. It was hidden, not in a book, but behind them, taped to the back of the shelf nearest the window, where the first morning light came in off the water. She only found it because she was cleaning, running her hand along the dust at the back of the boards, and felt the edge of the envelope. There was no number on it, just her name. "Nora, if you're still here, then you didn't just come, you stayed. That is more than I dared hope for. I have one last thing to tell you, and then the books are yours to do with as you please. Burn them if you want. They were never about being read. They were about the paying of attention, the looking, the refusing to let a place or a person disappear unwitnessed. I spent my life being told I was the one who ran away, the difficult one, the one who couldn't be what the family needed. And for a long time, I believed it. I built a life out of the belief that I was, at heart, alone. But I was wrong. I was never alone. There was bread at my door and a friend on my step, and a whole town that let me belong to it. I just couldn't see it, because I was so busy protecting myself from a family that had already stopped looking for me. Don't do what I did. Don't spend 50 years proving you don't need anyone. Let them leave the bread. Let them knock. Let yourself be found. You were never a failure, Nora. Neither was I. We were just people who hadn't yet found the place where nobody could make us leave. You found it now. Take care of it. Adelaide." Nora sat in the room above the shuttered store, with the 51 books around her and the October light coming in off the gray Atlantic, and she held the last letter against her chest. She was 46 years old. Her right hand still trembled. She would never do the work she had spent her life becoming good at. But she was not the thing she had been driving toward Harrow's Reach, believing she was. Finished, emptied out, a life that had run its course. She was the person a stranger had spent 51 years leaving letters for without ever knowing her name. She was the one who came, and then stayed. She was the end of a distance that had lasted 3 generations, and the beginning of something that would last longer. Down below, the bell on the bakery door rang. Bennett was climbing the outside stairs with a paper bag, the way he did most mornings now. Not knocking, not asking for thanks. Nora folded the letter and put it with the others. Some people spend their whole lives believing they are the ones who were left behind. They build careful, guarded lives around that belief, and they miss the bread at the door, the friend on the step, the town that has already decided they belong. Adelaide had learned it too late. Nora had learned it just in time, because home, she understood now, is not the place they let you stay. It is the place where someone spent 51 years making sure that when you finally arrived, you would know you had never really been alone.